We are officially halfway through the decade. So here are what I think are the best movies of the 2020s so far. 2 from each year for a total of 10. This isn't a ranked list, this is just doing it year by year to keep things easier. In 2020, the best movie of 2020 is Love and Monsters. What do you get when you take a zombie movie and combine it with the world of Fallout 4? You get Love and Monsters, a delightfully fun and surprisingly original film. Now, the theme of a post-apocalyptic world filled with monsters or non-human characters like zombies has been done a lot, especially over the last 10 years. At this point, it can feel pretty tired and cliche. But somehow, this movie takes what should feel like a worn-out premise and does something genuinely fresh and clever with it. Our main character isn't your typical action hero. He's not some fearless soldier or unstoppable tough guy. In fact, he's the complete opposite. He's a total coward. Normally in a movie like this, you'd get someone like Sylvester Stallone or Schwarzenegger or even Chris Pratt, mowing down monsters, cracking cheesy one-liners, and turning everything into a full-on action spectacle. But this movie doesn't do that. Instead, our lead is just a regular guy trying to survive. He reacts the way most of us probably would, terrified of everything around him. Giant bugs, mutated creatures, the unknown, it all genuinely scares him. And honestly, that makes the story feel way more grounded and relatable. At its core, the movie is a journey of self-discovery and fighting for love. It's a genuinely delightful ride, filled with memorable characters, especially Michael Rooker's character, who absolutely steals every scene he's in. And then there's the robot. Even though this robot is only in the movie for a few minutes, you grow so attached to her that when she's gone, you actually feel it. You miss her almost immediately. That's how well written and charming the character is. This is a very fun, energetic romp, with creative creature designs, strong world building, and plenty of humor throughout. That said, there is one running joke about the main character being kicked out of his colony for stealing food. That gets a little stale after the third time. It doesn't ruin anything, but it does overstay its welcome just a little bit. Still, the plot is exciting, the pacing is strong, and the emotional beats really land. Honestly, I hope this becomes the next big franchise. This world has so much potential. It would work beautifully as a video game, comic book series, or TV show. What makes it even better is that it isn't based on anything. It's not a book, it's not a manga, it's not a game. It's completely original. And yet the world building is so full of possibility and rich that you just want to keep exploring it. I want to return to this world. I want to see it explored. I want to see more stories told here. My other pick from 2020 is Pixar's Soul. It took 15 years, but Pixar finally made a movie that I think is better than The Incredibles. And maybe that's because I come from a more religious background. I was raised in the Mormon church my whole life, so this movie really hit me on a deeper level, kind of like Coco did. That movie also resonated with me because of its spiritual and religious themes, and Soul does that too. Maybe that's why this one hit so hard for me. Honestly, I thought this movie was incredibly well done. The Great Before, that whole world was beautifully designed. The characters were clever, creative, and full of personality. I'll admit I found 22 a little bit annoying at times, but I think that was kind of the point. She's supposed to be annoying. And the message is really powerful. This is the kind of movie a lot of people need, especially people who are asking themselves big questions like, what is my purpose and why am I here? This movie actually takes that question seriously and explores it in a really emotional, meaningful way. I'll admit there was a moment where I thought this movie was going to completely lose me, when he ends up, for lack of a better term, possessing a cat. I remember thinking, oh no, this is getting really weird, this is going off the rails. But then the movie kept going, and suddenly it all made sense. There was a reason for it. He starts to see how he lived his life, how he treated people, what he took for granted, and that realization was really powerful. It worked. This movie has so much heart. It's funny, it's emotional, it's thoughtful, has a great soundtrack, and the animation is stunning. You can see tiny cracks, textures, and details everywhere. At times, it honestly looks almost live action. Pixar really went all out on this one. You could feel the care, you could feel the love poured into it. I do not have any complaints. This is probably the most perfect Pixar movie since Coco. And the only reason Coco isn't perfect for me is because some of the conflict could have been solved if people had just communicated a little better. That's not an issue here. I absolutely love Soul. It's thoughtful, it's emotional, and it's beautiful. My first pick from 2021 is Black Widow. This is, in my opinion, how Brad Bird should have done Incredibles 2. Incredibles 2 is disappointing for me, because instead of expanding on the ideas from the first film and having a movie about a crime-fighting family, it instead essentially became an Elastigirl spin-off movie with a long Jack short thrown into this filler into an already thin movie. This is what I was hoping Incredibles 2 would be. Even though Brad Bird was not involved in the film, it feels like a lot of influence was taken from him, because this film feels like a combination of the first Incredibles movie and Mission Impossible Ghost Protocol, which he directed. The actors all have a very strong dynamic. The villain is one of the most despicable non-superpowered MCU villains, right up there for me with Robert Redford's character from the Captain America Winter Soldier movie. The action is well choreographed, the plot is intriguing, and even when the film slows down, the dialogue is also compelling and keeps you invested, and I think it was worth the 11-year wait. My other pick from 2021 is Spider-Man No Way Home. This film works because of its characters and their arcs and how they're resolved. Tobey Spidey gets to be the cool older mentor to the other two Spideys. Andrew Garfield's Spidey finally has closure over Gwen's death. And by the end of the film, Tom Holland's Spidey has grown as a character the most that he has in the other films. The other two films he was thought of as the successor to Stark, but by the end of the film, he is his own man. He gets a fresh reset. He gets a chance to be the friendly neighborhood Spider-Man he always wanted to be. He's learned how to control his anger and grief, and how to be responsible with his powers. For some, this may be nothing more than a novelty film, but for me, I think it's a film that brings one of the best closures to a character in the MCU, and I can't wait to see how they continue his story later this year in Spider-Man Brand New Day. My first pick from 2022 is Weird, the Al Yankovic Story. If you're going to do a biopic about Weird Al, you of course have to do it as a parody. This movie is over-the-top ridiculous, but played so straight. Daniel Radcliffe absolutely disappeared to the role of Weird Al. It's chock full of celebrity cameos, references to Weird Al songs, and has sharp writing, a bonkers plot, and exactly the kind of weird you expect. My other 2022 pick is The Batman. Unlike other DC films, Batman or otherwise, this isn't an action-focused film. There's still action and it's very well done, but at its core it's a detective noir film. The majority of the movie is Batman trying to figure out how all these crimes are connected. If you like the Arkham games and you enjoy the parts of the games where you were playing the detective side of Batman, the majority of the movie is basically that. Robert Pattinson gives the performance of his career here. He is absolutely amazing as Bruce Wayne, and I think making him a much younger character who's still new to being Batman made the film a lot stronger. Paul Dano gives an absolutely chilling performance as Riddler, who unlike every other version isn't this cartoon. He feels like a real-life serial killer who could be anyone, which makes him incredibly scary. The plot is engaging, the action is exciting, it's incredibly well-written, well-crafted, and well-directed, and in my opinion, so far is the greatest DC movie ever made. From 2023, we have Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3. The stakes for the movie are incredibly high, the characters all get satisfying arcs, and they all work extremely well off each other. And unlike a lot of MCU sequels that forgot what the previous films set up and don't follow through with, such as Baron Mordo in the first Doctor Strange movie, everything set up in the previous films comes back and feels important. The stakes of the plot revolve around Rocket. And unlike a movie like Black Panther Wakanda Forever, where characters like Riri Williams felt more like plot devices rather than actual characters, Rocket is an actual character in this film, not a MacGuffin. The way each character's arc ends is incredibly satisfying. Out of the three Guardians films, this is definitely the one with the most heart. I'd say it's almost perfect, but unfortunately what does hold it back is a pattern I notice with a lot of these films. Sometimes they are afraid to show much negative emotion. There are some very dark moments in the film, and sometimes instead of letting the audience feel the weight, they try to lighten things up with jokes that can be a bit ill-timed. I know you want to lighten the tension, but sometimes it's more effective to let the audience feel something else. Another element that holds it back a bit is something that bogs down a lot of MCU projects. They expect you to have watched everything that has these characters. If you go into the movie not having watched the Guardians of the Galaxy Holiday Special on Disney+, you're going to be a bit confused by the beginning. There are certain characters and plotlines from that special that come back and are important, but if you haven't watched it, you're going to be a bit confused. However, apart from needing to watch the Holiday Special, this is a film that feels very focused on its own narrative. It isn't trying to set up the next 10 movies and shows. It feels like it stands as its own story. What they do with certain characters imply they could bring them back if they want to, but it doesn't feel like a priority. This feels like a movie made by a filmmaker and not by a studio. It feels like a movie that was made the way the director wanted to make it and not trying to work around 10,000 studio notes. It's an incredibly satisfying emotional end to the Guardians trilogy. My other pick from 2023 is Across the Spider-Verse. This will go down in history as one of the best films of all time, animated or otherwise. This will be talked about in the same conversation as Empire Strikes Back, The Hunger Games Catching Fire, and Avengers Infinity War as one of the best sequels of all time. It's everything a sequel should be. It expands the ideas from the first one and gives even stronger character growth to returning characters, while also introducing new ones. Everything done right about the first one is done even better in this one. There's more emotion, there's more action, there's higher stakes, and it's got the trademark Lord and Miller humor from the other animated films like The Lego Movie and Mitchells vs. Machines, while also having very serious drama, heart, and dark moments to balance it out. I am so jealous of kids that get to grow up with this movie. This is beyond anything you'd ever want in a Spider-Man movie. It starts with incredibly high stakes and only rolls faster from there. It's all killer, no filler. My first pick for 2024 is The Wild Robot. This movie is beautifully animated. I continue to be impressed by DreamWorks experimenting with new animation styles, whether that be the storybook-like animation of Puss in Boots' The Last Wish, or the new character designs for Orion in the Dark. I was worried based on the second trailer that this would be another DreamWorks talking animal movie, indistinguishable from the likes of Madagascar, Kung Fu Panda, Bee Movie, Over the Hedge, but the reason for the animals talking does make sense in the context of the film, and it doesn't feel forced or cheap. The main character is the most emotional robot I've seen in a film since The Iron Giant. There's a fair bit of dark humor, particularly from three rather morose possum babies, whose hyperfixation with the circle of life is reminiscent of the star from the Mario movie. The film has a fantastic score, which is why it's a shame that there's a generic pop song halfway through the movie, and it sounds very similar to one used in Pixar's Brave. Had the film just continued to use score, I would have enjoyed those scenes a bit more. The first act does move a bit too fast, putting its second act emotional punch at the end of the first act. However, halfway through the second act, the film manages to find its footing again, and brings back all of the emotional punch and poignancy. It feels like the good old days of Pixar, when they made films where the kids could enjoy the bright colors and cute characters, but the adults got more out of it through the emotion and message. Wild Robot will become an instant classic. My other 2024 pick is Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes. While this one didn't have as much heart as the previous three films, particularly Dawn of the Planet of the Apes, it still expanded the world in compelling ways. The villain is one of the best in this franchise, and the new main character, while he's not as compelling as Caesar, is still memorable. You can tell this was directed by the same director as the Maze Runner films, particularly in the third act, because there are a lot of reminders of that with the style, and I think it worked. This had a compelling mystery, great action, and interesting world, fantastic VFX, and made me go bananas, and I can't wait for the next entry in the franchise. From 2025, we have Predator Badlands. This is a unique entry in the franchise, because not only is it the first standalone Predator movie to be PG-13, it's also the first standalone Predator movie that does not take place on Earth. As much as I like the other Predator movies, they all kind of feel the same. Same story beats, same third act. This one completely throws that out the window and twists the franchise in a new direction. A direction that I thought worked, but I can tell is going to be very divisive for longtime fans of the franchise. I know a lot of people are going to be turned away by the Predator being the protagonist of the movie, because when you think Predator, you think ruthless hunter that you root against, and here they make him a more sympathetic, emotional character. Again, I thought it worked, but I completely understand if that irks somebody. The main non-alien character, played by Elle Fanning, is a delightful character. She's like Ripley from the Alien movies, if Ripley had a sense of humor. She's infectiously optimistic, while the Predator is pessimistic, and it works well and provides some well-done humor. And the humor in the movie is well-timed and works, as opposed to the 2018 Predator movie where the humor was forced and lowbrow. However, I thought the setup, as fresh to the franchise as it was, wasn't totally original either. Of course, the main character is a misfit outcast needing to prove himself. Of course, there's a MacGuffin he needs to find to restore his honor. Of course, there's an enemies to friends arc. It's familiar, but it also works. Now, does the controversial PG-13 rating hurt the movie? I didn't think so. I didn't watch this movie and think, I wish this movie were more violent and brutal. In fact, I think compared to a lot of other PG-13 movies, this is pretty tame. I've talked many times about how I found Doctor Strange Multiverse of Madness too violent, specifically the scene where Wanda murders a bunch of superheroes in excessively graphically violent ways, and how that really put me off the movie. This has just the right amount. The blood in the movie is alien blood. I'd say the violence level is about the same as Alita Battle Angel or Mandalorian. It's a movie very much aimed at the teenage crowd, but I think it's also accessible enough for longtime fans of the franchise who look past the PG-13 rating and give it a chance. There's only one curse word in the entire movie, and it's a tame one, which, again, is more than I could say for a lot of comic book movies over the last 10 years, even the PG-13 ones. The action is well done, the story feels fresh to the world of these movies, and the characters are well written. I'd recommend watching the first Predator movie and the first two Alien movies. They're not required viewing, but you'll definitely get more out of this when certain callbacks happen. They're quick enough that you won't be confused if this is your first movie in the universe, but you'll get a grin on your face if you do understand. And my other pick for 2025 is Sketch. This caught me completely off guard in the best way possible. Now, when you hear that this is from Angel Studios, you might immediately assume that this is an overly faith-based or religious film, and for good reason, because that's largely been their reputation up until now. But Sketch is different. While it's certainly family-friendly, it's not heavy-handed with the religious messaging. In fact, it doesn't really lean into any specific religious themes at all. Instead, it's a wildly accessible, emotionally rich, and creatively daring film that just about anyone can enjoy. What surprised me the most was the tone. This is technically a family movie, but it's got a real edge to it. The kind of edge you'd find in Goosebumps or even classic 80s kids films. The kind of movies that Steven Spielberg used to make. Ones that weren't afraid to push the emotional boundaries of the younger audiences. Sketch taps into that exact energy. It has moments that are genuinely intense, even a little creepy, but it always knows the limits. It walks the fine line of being scary enough to thrill without being traumatizing, sort of like the Babadook if it were PG, and blended with the quirky humor of a Doctor Who episode, specifically the one with the girl whose drugs come to life. That's Sketch in a nutshell. And speaking of drugs, visual effects are incredibly well done. The way the hand-drawn creatures integrate with the live-action footage is seamless and imaginative. Some of the drugs feel like twisted, evil versions of Pokemon, equal parts fascinating and unsettling. It's a brilliant creative concept brought to life with care and flair. Performance-wise, the film delivers across the board. Tony Hale is excellent, bringing the kind of grounded emotional weight that really anchors the story. But the real revelation is the cast of child actors, who give some of the most believable and heartfelt performances I've seen this year. Like a true Spielbergian adventure, the film's emotional core is deeply tied to themes of grief, loss, and healing. These heavier elements are handled with sensitivity and nuance, never feeling out of place even amid the fantastical premise. But Sketch isn't all darkness and tension. It's also funny, warm, and heartfelt. There's real humor here, some of it whimsical, some of it character-driven, and at its heart it's a story about connection, creativity, and resilience. It's one of those rare movies that successfully juggles scares, laughs, and emotional depth without compromising any of them. In a year that was full of sequels, reboots, and formulaic blockbusters, Sketch stood out as something truly original. It's bold, it's imaginative, it's emotionally resilient, and most of all, it's fun. And I honestly can't recommend it highly enough. So there you go, there's my picks for the best movies of the decade. Be sure to leave yours in the comments.